Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. Now, are you interested in marketing like the Fortune 100 without the Fortune 100 budget? We are too. So we're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and in today's episode, we've invited on a legend in the marketing world, Erik Huberman, and he's here to talk to us today about how to market like the big dogs with small budgets as solopreneurs and micro businesses. Now, Erik is the founder and CEO of Hawke Media, one of the fastest growing marketing consultancies in the United States. And he went from making only $350 in his first year in business to growing and selling 2 successful companies. Erik has been awarded Inc.'s Top 25 Marketing Influencers and Forbes 30 Under 30 and Relevance's Top 100 Marketing Influencers to follow in 2020. At least to say, Erik's the man when it comes to marketing. Now, there's something for everyone to learn in this episode, and we learned a ton. So, as always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources, and we hope you enjoy this one. See you in there.
All right, and we are live. Erik, welcome to the show, man. So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we have so many great things to talk to you about today. I'm super excited about this episode. But I have to ask before we get into it, how is lemonadestand.io going for you? I saw the video on your website and it looked like a pretty compelling.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a pivot. You know, Hawke Media has been a fun run, but selling lemonade, man, and child labor.
Yeah, both of those things. There's so much missing context here, you guys. So if you're listening to this, please go to the website, watch the video. It's hilarious.
Thanks, man. No, that was fun. We made that 7 years ago, I think it was.
Wow, no
I was like, let's do a TV commercial. Like, we're a tiny business, but let's try it. Speaking of what we're going to be talking about, but like, we went for it and actually did really well for us.
Wow. Yeah. I believe that. It made us both literally laugh out loud, and that's usually a good sign.
It just adds some humanity to the mix, you know? It's like that pattern disruption. People just don't expect it. It's awesome.
Well, and I will be like, the full conversation of making that was, what do people like? Well, they like puppies and kids. So, but like, GoDaddy had just been banned from the Super Bowl for creating a puppy mill ad, and they were like, no, we're not running this. And I was like, so let's not go puppies because they're having a bad connotation right now. Like, let's go with kids. And we got those kids were like hilarious because they were so professional, and they're like 9 years old, and they're asking me like what the motivation for their role was in the commercial, which they did a great job, obviously, but it wasn't a 2-hour, feature film. It was a 30-second commercial, and they're like asking me for like deep insight into what they're supposed to be experiencing in the role and what exactly is an outsourced CMO. And I'm trying to explain this to a very professional 9-year-old.
Wow, what a trippy experience that must be.
Yeah, it was really fun.
That's great.
Very cool.
I wasn't sure if they were like kids that you had just like brought in from your neighborhood or not, but I mean, it sounds like this was
my move. Like, actually, it's still to this day how I work. But no, we hired a production company to help us with that. We did work in trade, actually. So we helped them with a bunch of marketing, and they helped us make that commercial. And they brought in like real professional, actor kids with their parents, and it was fun.
Wow, I'm so passionate about it. Okay, we can get into real stuff now. That was
a great awesome. Yeah, for sure. So Erik, like, rumor has it, I mean, your bio just says it all, but you went from making $350 your first year in business to successfully selling 2 companies. Like, my first question is, what lit that entrepreneurial spirit in you, and what was that journey like so far to where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ever one thing, but if I had to point at one thing, I'd say it was my dad and my upbringing. My dad and grandfather were both entrepreneurs. And so in the actual literal sense of the use, I took it for granted. Like, I'd go get a job to learn something, but like, I'm probably going to end up starting my own thing. And entrepreneur wasn't really a word to me until I was already doing entrepreneurial thing long into it. I was going to just start something. Like, it was like, I'm going to build a business. And I didn't think of it as like a calling or a need. It was just like, I thought that's just what you did. Like, again, the taking for granted thing. I was like, of course there's people that just want to work a job, but like, if you really want to go for it, like, you probably want to start your own thing and explore, and it's fun. And so I was constantly starting little things. Like my first business endeavor was taking a bunch of my parents' stuff I decided they didn't need anymore, throwing it in a trash bag and selling it door to door when I was 6.
Wow, heck yeah!
I like that you made that decision.
And my neighbors were looking at me like, and I was 6, but I had enough EQ to know that I was being weird, but I didn't care. And I was like, this golf ball's 5 cents. And like, I think I made $1.37 or something that day. And then I had to split it with my friend that joined me, which pissed me off because it was my current stuff. And I didn't do that again. But yeah, did the lemonade stand thing, realized that was going to take too long to make the money I wanted. And then started buying and selling Beanie Babies when I was 8 and made like $4,000 as an 8-year-old and went,
Wow.
yep, this was good. And that's when I started doing it because at 8 years old, I wanted to be a rock star. I was going to be a guitarist. I still have guitars sitting right there. And I'm not that good, to be clear. I just enjoy it. But at the time, I thought I was good. And so I told my dad I needed an electric guitar so I could be like Eric Clapton, because my name's Eric too. And he goes, great, get a fucking job. To an 8-year-old. It's interesting word choice, but that was my upbringing. And so but again, it wasn't like, I didn't take that as a hit. It wasn't like an ego hit because I just took him as serious. So I was like, all right, get a job. And so that turned into Beanie Babies, which I bought the guitar. I bought a BMX. I saved money for a car, all at 8 years old, buying and selling Beanie Babies. And so I always liked doing things like that. And when I turned about 12, I realized I was not that good of a guitarist and started getting more into the business side of things.
Wow,
Nice.
man. Well, first of all, respect for the journey. I mean, I can tell that's like in your bones. That's entrepreneurial DNA right there, which I love about a person. What I'm fascinated by, though, is like I see so many people that get really good, I suppose, at, for example, the selling of services or products or whatever. But you're able to take that skill set of being able to go out and sell Beanie Babies or whatever, and then segue that into a much larger enterprise. And that's not even just a skill set thing. That's a human being thing, to be able to take yourself along that journey and become the person necessary to run something like that. So how did that transition happen for you?
I think I mean, listen, you have to be smart enough and hardworking enough to be successful in these kind of things, but there's a lot of luck. I think luck is actually the biggest variable. And I don't think enough successful people give it enough credit of like, circumstance, timing. Don't get me wrong. You have to be working for the opportunity to happen. There's a great joke that I heard that it's like a guy woke up every morning and prayed to God that he'd win the lottery that day. And every day for 10 years, he prays every day, please God, let me win the lottery. And 10 years into this, he's walking down the sidewalk right after praying and the clouds open and God speaks to him and says, you got to meet me halfway here and at least buy a ticket.
That's exactly right.
Wow,
So,
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that is a lot to do with success. You have to do things to actually be be able to receive the opportunity, but then how successful you are is luck. And I really believe that. And it's not trying to be modest. It's just, I can go back to where my success has come from. And like, went into real estate out of college, 2008, the entire banking industry collapsed. As you mentioned, I made $350 that year. I'd be in real estate right now if we didn't have the worst economic situation since the Great Depression when I graduated college, which could have been fine. I actually think I wouldn't have been nearly as happy. I definitely wouldn't have been as successful, like, because I'd just be another real estate guy. And like, there's money to be made. I'd be fine, but I don't think I'd be this level. And then after that, I had grown up trying to start things. I actually tried to start an e-commerce business when I was 12, and my dad refused to sign the seller's permit. And so but I built the website. I got all the contracts. I did everything to the point of launch, but then I needed a license to buy the products to sell. And it was like, I can't get that license. So when I say refused, I think he just said no like once, and I didn't really push it because I was 12. And so I always had an interest in internet. So I ended up starting an online music company because I had played music. The drummer from my high school band's dad turned out to be a successful entrepreneur that really liked me, reached out and said, there's got to be a way to do this. I know you're looking for something. I really admire your hustle. Let's do something together. It's a lot longer story than that, but he ended up raising us $1 million and putting me in charge of it, giving me 5% of the company, paying me minimum wage, which is a lot better than $350 a year. And so I went to work. So I spent 2 years making minimum wage, but basically I think my title was Chief Development Officer, and then became COO or something. The title thing was always funny with him, but I ran the company for 2 years, got to completely figure out how to launch and build an online music. It was business coaching for musicians. So worked with Deepak Chopra on it, and Tom Silverman, who ran Tommy Boy Records, like one of the godfathers of hip hop from the record label side. He had Queen Latifah, Too Short, Naughty by Nature, Africa Bambaataa, Wu-Tang, like crazy label guy. I got to work with all these amazing people, and I was 22. And so then from there, I built it for 2 years, realized it was never going to be a big business. It was a great passion business, but I was 24 and wanted to build a nest egg. And so I hired a CEO to take my place, moved on, started a t-shirt subscription e-commerce company, literally just thought it'd be fun to like do this. There was like subscription e-commerce wasn't really a thing, but we thought like if we could just ship someone a t-shirt every month that fit their style, maybe guys would like it because who likes shopping? We got my buddy from college to put up like a PayPal account and a one-page lander that went to PayPal, put it up. And then I got one tip from a friend that said, hey, if you want to get into TechCrunch, just tell them you raised money. So I completely lied and said I raised 100 grand, which also now nobody would care if you raised 100 grand. It's not a number for these companies, but they literally picked it up in 15 minutes and put it on the homepage. And it turns out that TechCrunch readers like t-shirts. So it immediately took off. Then we got picked up in like Thrillist and Maxim and Huffington Post and Wall Street Journal and Vogue and all these things. And it blew out, then sold it after a year and a half. Got offered to run, this is a lot longer story, but got offered to run biz dev at Live Nation, e-commerce at Warner Music, because kind of the music and e-commerce tie-in, or join this little incubator called Science that had just launched this cool startup called Dollar Shave Club and wanted me to consult on the marketing side for all these companies. They had a bunch of e-com companies. And I went, well, I don't want to commute to Burbank or Hollywood from Santa Monica. For those that don't live in LA, it's like, it's going to be an hour and a half each way. Like it's kind of sucks. And it was literally, that was a big part of my decision. They were all offering the same money. The other two are way more credible, but I was like, this startup stuff's kind of fun. So I joined Science. Things went pretty well there. And then I helped them launch an activewear brand that after a year we sold called Ellie, still up. It's Ellie.com. We sold it to Bally Total Fitness. I identified the buyer. They tried to recruit me to come work for them. I said, no, but I'll consult. And I was making, at that point, I was 26. I went from making minimum wage for 4 years at my Fame Wizard was the music company, then Swag of the Month was a t-shirt, minimum wage for 4 years with those, and in a decent amount of debt. And this company goes, we want you to work full time. I'm like, no, I'll work 1 day a week. They're like, you work 3 days a week. I'm like, fine, but you're going to pay me $200 an hour. And they're like, okay. I was like, what?
Great.
So start consulting for them. Meanwhile, I like working. So I had 3 days a week of work with them. I had 4 free days a week. So I started consulting for other people, figuring it out. And after about 6 months, I had 8 clients. I was making 30 grand a month as a 26-year-old. And I was like, this is pretty fun. But, and I kept trying to find agencies and other marketers to help these companies. I'd like be their quarterback, their outsourced CMO. But then when it came time to execute, I found that like the entire marketing ecosystem was completely broken. 99% of marketers and agencies are just completely full of shit. Just sucks, but it's true. And so, and the few that are good tend to get really expensive, want long contracts, high minimums. And I went, this sucks. I'm just going to hire my own little SWAT team. I'm not used to making this kind of money. So I'll just pay these people and use it for that. And I'll hire a little team of 7 people, each with their own expertise, like a Facebook marketer, email marketer, web designer. I'll have a fractional CMO so I can kind of step out and help grow this. And we'll go from there. And went back to the companies, said it's all a la carte, month to month, make it easy. And that was how Hawke was born. That was 8 years ago. Started with these guys. The companies loved it immediately. We started growing, started building a reputation. And so 8 years later, and a lot of things in between, we're now like 320 people, have worked with over 3,500 brands. Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Oh,
holy
man.
crap. There's just so much to unpack just from that whole story, Eric.
I had to pack it in.
Ooh, I love it. Wow, that was so cool. And what I love about that story is like you kind of like, it's the essence of what we're talking about here today, like scrappy actions with a lot of results that have kind of just happened, you know. And of course you put effort in there and you kind of attributed luck to being some part of the equation, but it's not like you started with a massive budget at your fingertips to be able to launch something.
Well, now that I've gone through the story, let's rewind and say, like, again, I'd be in real estate, but then I ended up in music because of a friend's dad that I stayed in touch with. And the only reason he liked me, I actually say the only reason, but one of the main reasons we stayed in touch was his son went through got into a little bit of trouble when I was in college, and I came out to LA while he was living in LA, and I basically dragged him out of it and just said, you snap the fuck out of it and take care of yourself. And he did. And his dad was appreciative. Like, it wasn't like, I didn't even know who his dad was, by the way, just until he raised the $1 million. I was like, wait, are you from, like, I grew up in a small town called Ojai, and real estate's not expensive there. So if like my mom has a giant house on 3 acres and it's cheaper than a 1-bedroom condo in LA. So it's like and it's only an hour away. So like growing up, if your friend had lived on a few acres of land, it didn't mean anything. So I didn't look at his family as like this wealthy family. I just thought it was, they did fine, whatever. It turned out he was one of the co-founders of Pay-Per-View, on the board of Men's Warehouse, and had a nonprofit with Deepak Chopra, like did pretty well. And so that was random. And then I left that just because of like 24. I literally remember saying, this isn't going to be the company that puts my kids through college at 24. I don't have kids yet. I'm 35. So like, it was like I don't know why I thought about that, but I did. And so then I went, I'm going to go find something else. And then the t-shirt thing was super random too. My next door neighbor was a t-shirt guy in my apartment. We came up with this idea together and just did it. And it's like, again, all these things that just like all of a sudden I've got, I'm 26, but I've got kind of 14 years of experience in e-commerce. Because again, when I was 12, I had tried to start my first e-commerce brand. So I had all this experience. I was one of the only guys in the space that had built and sold to e-commerce companies that was also willing to go advise other ones. And like, I obviously that came with doing things and executing, but there was a lot of luck that was the period when like HP, Red Bull, and Verizon all reached out to me to try to figure out their e-com and marketing strategies. Like nobody
Wow.
understood digital yet. I was this guy and I was willing to run an agency and a service business because most people with my background want to start their next brand or go into CPG and stick to starting product companies. And I was like, I kind of like working with a bunch of different brands. So again, takes doing it, but there was a lot of just, I could have never predicted this going forward. But now looking back, it's like, look at all these things that lined up that put me into e-commerce at the perfect time.
Yeah. This reminds me of the saying that an old mentor of mine used to say, which was that luck is created when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
like, because I think that it's so easy, and I feel this way too, by the way. So just to reciprocate, like, I feel like there's been so many random happens chance situations that have led us to where we are today. And I feel very grateful for those things because they could have not happened and my life would
Yep.
have turned out differently. Excuse me. However, like, it's easy to hear that, like, I lucked into my success on some level and feel a little bit powerless for somebody that is not yet there, but wants to go out
When
and
I
do
think
it.
that's where it's important. Execution, you'll be
Yeah.
some level of successful if you get shit done and
Do
you're smart
something.
enough to learn from what you're doing. I don't
That's
mean learn
right.
from just mistakes, but also double down when it's working. Like you have to be intelligent. Not you don't have to be Mensa. You don't have to have the giant IQ, but you have to be. Malcolm Gladwell talks about this. Who I have mixed feelings about, but this point that he makes in Outliers, I think is prudent, which is you have to be smart enough to be successful. If you're dumb, it's going to be tough. You also have to be hardworking enough. Like, and everybody, I love because so many people credit their success with I worked really hard. We all have 24 hours in a day. What the fuck does that mean? Like,
Yeah. Shit. Yes.
we can all work so hard. Like, I actually need my sleep. I need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm not like the whole like I go to bed at 2 a.m. I wake up at 4. I meditate for an hour. Then I take a steam bath or whatever the fuck these people. Like, I don't know why. I wake up. I look at my phone for
Same.
10 minutes. I brush my teeth. I put some gel in my hair, and I go out and I go take my first call on my laptop. Like these people make this sound like this crazy intangible thing to be successful, and it's like, no, you just kind of you do the work. You make sure to learn from what you're doing, really assess and be reflective on what you're doing, and are you spending your time on the things that are going to make you the most successful. Don't chase shiny objects, but then like, again, be smart about how you're building and growing. But then it is luck. And how successful. I will not be the richest person in the world. I really doubt it. I have not bet on the horse that's going to make me the rich. Like building Hawke Media, I'll be plenty successful, but I don't think I'm going to beat Jeff Bezos. Like, I don't think that I'm building Amazon. That's okay. I know that, but be conscious about that. And also don't go the other way, where if you're betting on a business that like you look at it and the scale can only be like, what does maxed out look like? Is it a $2 million business? Is it a $100,000 business? If you're opening a coffee shop in a 10 or 300 person town, you're probably limited at the level of success. Like, be reflective on that, make choices consciously. But then again, how successful you are, if you're really, if you have a large addressable market, really does depend on luck and timing a lot of the time. And that's okay. Like that's part of it. But your baseline will be high enough if you really focus on being successful.
Yeah, man.
And
I
when the
love
right
that.
opportunity presents itself, you can capitalize on it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So now, Erik, I know, like, you know that our audience, primarily solopreneurs, thought leaders, coaches,
Mhm.
speakers, consultants, maybe teams of up to 5, let's
Yep.
say, and we're talking about, how to be impactful with marketing. And I feel like there are many misconceptions just about marketing as a whole. I know everyone we talk to knows that they have to do it. And a lot of it's like, well, I'm
Yep.
doing social media.
Yep.
And maybe they have a small email list or what have you. And it's like thinking about robust marketing just seems like this impossible task, largely because they often didn't come from a realm of maybe sales or marketing. And the thought about even hiring an agency just seems so far fetched that
Yep.
it just seems impossible to make a splash. So, very simply put, like, is it really possible for a solopreneur, small business, to make a splash with a limited budget?
So I'm going to say yes and no.
Okay,
Should
interesting.
they invest in marketing? Absolutely. Don't think of it as a splash. That's,
Sure.
finite, and my partner likes to call them sugar rushes. Like they're that
Mm,
you want to build sustainable marketing, not splash. And so, because people don't have that kind of attention span. Great, you get your attention for one day,
mhm.
and you make a splash, they'll forget about you tomorrow. And so, if you don't do ongoing marketing, and so little plug, but just came out with the book, The Hawke Method. And so, what we talk about, literally, the whole framework of this has to do with this. It's we talk about there's three principles of marketing, and you have to cover all three because it's kind of like a tripod. If you don't, it falls over. So awareness, nurturing, and trust are those three principles. Awareness: how do you make new people aware that your company exists? Whether it's advertising, PR, word of mouth, what are the ways you introduce someone to your company? Just introduce them. Doesn't have to turn into a customer. That's awareness. And so that's usually what people think of as marketing. It's where the splash comes in. How do I get a bunch of people aware I exist? The issue is the biggest thing people miss in marketing, and I really mean this is the biggest thing, is the idea of what's called a purchase cycle. The time from when someone becomes aware you exist to when they buy there is a time period there. And it's
Yep.
usually somewhere between weeks and months. It's not usually days, and it's not usually years either, unless it's a house or a car, maybe. But generally it's weeks to months. And so what you do during that period from when they first become aware that you exist to when they actually purchase, and then what they do after they purchase so they keep coming back, that's nurturing. And nurturing is critical because that's actually where you make your money, and that's where splash has nothing to do with it. You still need to fill that awareness to actually have someone to nurture, but then email marketing, SMS marketing, staying in touch. If you're a solo entrepreneur, just like literally sending emails to your contacts and making sure you stay in front of them, that's want to credit my success to one specific thing, it's that I email everyone on my
Yeah.
contact list every quarter, still to this day. And there's like 16, 18,000 of them. So
Hell yeah.
still check in with everyone all the time, because you never know, staying top of mind, staying in touch, what's going to happen as they build trust with you, as their needs change, et cetera. Like that is critical. And so that nurturing piece is so important, and building more and more awareness so that nurturing piece gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but then continuing to nurture is incredibly important. And then trust, which is synonymous with brand, is really about, like, early on, no one's going to trust you because they don't know who you are. You have no brand. So getting third party validation is really critical to getting that, because you can borrow trust. So thinking about like reviews, testimonials, endorsements, influencer marketing, PR, these are all places where someone else is trusted and they're giving you and they're validating you. You're basically borrowing the trust in them. And that works until you start being consistent with your own delivery. You build a reputation of your own, especially as a solopreneur. People start to go, this is the go-to person for this. You get that word of mouth piece. People start to hear your name all over. They start to maybe see you all over, hear from you in emails. You'll build trust with them, and you can also help convert that way. And so again, those are really, when you're thinking about marketing, if you're literally by yourself still, how are you introducing new people to your product or service, or you? How are you nurturing that so you can continue to bring people along to get them to a point where they want to buy and bring them back to buy again? Because lifetime value of a customer is way more critical than whatever that first thing they buy is. And then how do you continue to build trust? That's it. And that, like, don't get me wrong, there's a billion things in that tactic wise,
Sure.
but at every scale, whether you're a solopreneur or you're a Fortune 100, those are the things that matter. And like we talk about it in the book, I met with a giant company in New York, and they were trying to figure out why they weren't growing. And we're talking multi-billion-dollar company. And I'm like, well, what are you doing for marketing? And they're like, well, we have email marketing, we have SMS, we're doing tons of content. We just rebuilt our site. And I'm like, you just listed a lot of nurturing items. What are you doing to build new awareness? They're like, well, advertising is expensive. I'm like, yeah, and customers churn. Like by nature, you're losing customers, you're losing people on that list, and you're not adding any new ones. Like it sounds simple. I'm talking to a person managing
Wow.
multi-billion dollar marketing budget that was like, oh yeah, we really need to step that up. By the way, they didn't end up working with us. I don't think they ever got out of their own way. This is one of the problems with bigger companies. But in your
Wow.
case, in smaller companies' case, you can be nimble about this and then reassess, where do you think you're missing? Like, do you think
Yeah.
that you don't have enough people on? You're always going to want to be doing all these things, but like, how are you doing on converting those potential customers to that awareness? Are you doing a good job of nurturing? Are you doing a job of trust? And it kind of helps you. That was the whole idea of the book, is like, this helps you assess, where am I missing on marketing and where do I need to double down, just from a high level. And then we talk about the different channels you can use, whether it's why use Facebook versus Google versus TV versus radio versus TikTok, why use email versus SMS versus content, why use them all, how they all work together, other tactics that you can use. So
Oh, okay. Must I just say that this may be one of the most valuable conversations that I think we've had on this show already? Like,
appreciate it.
because
Erik,
it's
man.
so like looking at it from the outside, if you're not an experienced marketer, and like I'm a novice at best at this, so I'm speaking for myself here as well. Like there's so many moving parts that it can be really difficult to identify what's the next thing that I should do, or what is working or what's not working.
Yep.
But that 3-step framework that you just explained really does a good job of encapsulating the process as a whole. And you're right, like you can always expand that out further or get as granular as you need to with it. But like I think that people get hung up with very specific components there. And like now you can point to one of those things. It's so helpful.
And the piece that's missing, honestly, is the benchmarking side. Like, okay, so you know, in a nutshell or in a vacuum, how your business is doing, but how are you doing compared to other people? And like, how is your conversion on a lead compared to other people? And that's something we're actually building at Hawke, is a free tool to just be like, hey, where do you stand on a benchmark, so that people can actually take this framework, look at where they stand on benchmark, and go, oh, my nurturing's broken.
Wow, please let us know when that tool comes out.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
Moving along.
One of the things that I really like about this conversation as well is that it speaks to this like delayed gratification that's inherently involved in marketing, because people want those instant results. You know, that's where the language of the splash comes from, because people want to see their actions lead to results. And the shorter period of time between when that happens, the easier it is to continue doing it.
But great, because it's now published and everything. But I quoted my business partner, wherein he used to tell our team all the time, like 9 women can't make a baby in a month. And it's like, that's marketing in a nutshell. Like, you can't rush this. It's going to take time. Time takes time. Turns out that's a Warren Buffett quote, but now he's eternally immortalized in this. And it's a Tony Del Mercado quote.
Well, it's official now.
But I literally learned like a week ago, like, Warren Buffett said that. That's like a famous quote of his. I'm like, oh, well, it's a Tony Del Mercado from Minnetonka, Minnesota as well.
Well, hey, good credit where credit's due, you know?
No, I always try to do that. Yeah,
for sure. So here's a question for you, Erik. So you're obviously out here, you're promoting your personal brand right now, like just being on podcasts, writing your book. You are a thought leader. I mean, you've had the expertise and you're out there doing the thing. So as a marketing professional for your own personal brand, like what's your strategy there? Is it quality? Is it quantity? Like how are you approaching it?
It's both. Honestly, like I have no problem with quantity, but I'm also always trying to up the quality. So I've been on some funny podcasts, and it's like a dude in his bedroom in India that's like on his cell phone, like, so tell me about your company. Like I just say yes, and that's been me the whole time. Like that's cool. Thankfully, my wife is very understanding, and I have no one else relying on my time yet. So like I've gone all in on like, I'm just going to say yes to everything. And now I've had to be a little more limited because things have scaled, but I've found that you never know. Like I was on a podcast recently that I didn't even know was that big. And like the next day after it went live, I got just bombarded with people. Heard you on this podcast. Heard you. I thought it was like some friend of a friend that was like, you know, in someone's bedroom podcast, but it turned out it had a giant audience. I could do more research on it. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of personal brand, it's funny. I don't think anyone on a podcast has asked me how I build it, but I do invest a lot in it. I have a speaking agency. I have a podcast agency. I have a book PR firm. I have 2 book launch companies. I wrote the book, obviously, to build the brand, but also the whole mission of Hawke morphed into accessibility to great marketing for everyone. The idea is like, how do we make the best marketing in the world accessible to the masses? The book is all part of that too. Like now we can just tell people what we do. We still know it takes a lot of work, and it's not like this is going to just replace us. Like read the book. Now you don't need anyone to help you. Like it's not that way.
It's a starting point.
But we're sending it to every client, every employee. Like it allows us to speak the same language. Like it really has been a powerful tool. And all of this goes into my brand is attached to Hawke Media. And the more I can be a marketing thought leader, the more it drives Hawke. And I've found that I have a knack for getting into rooms and doing things. So I have all those firms, plus an internal PR firm, plus a content team that helps me write thought leadership, plus an SEO PR firm that helps me publish articles that we want just for like SEO purposes. And then so I'm speaking at tons of events. I'm on podcasts. We host our own events. I've got the book. I've got my own podcast with, I think, 80 episodes at this point with about 25,000 monthly downloads. And it all feeds back to the same principle of like, we're trying to help people with marketing. So it ends up all becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy of the more I build my brand, the more Hawke builds its brand. And that's been fun too. I mean, the building a personal brand comes with a lot of work, but I'd say it has to be there. I don't want to say it has to be authentic, but I think a lot of people get into this like personal brand world and they start like trying to flash cars and like do things that like, look, I'm rich and you can be rich too. And the problem that they don't realize, and frankly, a lot of them don't have that high of an aptitude. I'm just going to be blunt. Two things. One that I like to talk about a lot. Number one, a Ferrari is cheaper than my lowest paid employee. So the idea that a Ferrari is a symbol of wealth is absolutely fucking absurd.
Mm-hmm.
It's a symbol of priorities. Like I'd rather hire another person than buy a Ferrari. And if you're like a car person and you want to race, I respect that. I love racing cars. Like I like racing rental cars, so I don't have to trash my own. But
Same thing.
so I get that. But if you're buying a Ferrari to show it off on your Instagram or renting a Ferrari to show it off on your Instagram, like the only people you're attracting are the lowest common denominator, and they don't make good customers either. So like that whole world that's gotten bigger and bigger, you get a lot of Instagram followers. You really do. But you don't make any money. None of these people make any money. And it's like this circle jerk of like bullshit that is a problem. So like in the like solopreneur world, be really wary, because having a big following doesn't actually get you any business. Most of the people are chasing the wrong thing and they don't actually make any money. I know many of them. And you realize like, yeah, you should just get a job. You'd probably do better financially. And it's actually the case. So when you're thinking about how to build that brand, like really think about who you're trying to attract. Because like when I say something like that, I just pissed off every bullshit artist out there. Well, thank God I don't want them as customers, because I did this live at Traffic and Conversion Summit, a marketing summit in San Diego.
Oh, cool.
And I said that, and it turned out the front row were 5 guys that had all just pulled up in Lambos. And I had just insulted the fuck out of all 5 of them, and everyone in the crowd is dying laughing. And I had no idea why. I didn't know, but I had pulled up to the hotel, and there were a line of Lamborghinis out front. I'm like, and again, I grew up around cars. I have a couple nice cars. Nobody would ever know because I don't fucking flash them, because that's not the point. And it's, if you love that, fine. But like to do it to like be like, you should work with me because I make money. It's like we all make that kind of money. It's just you prioritize your fucking Lambo over your employees. Like that's and at the end of the day, again, if you make enough, fine. But I think a lot of people think that that's like the step of like, I've made money because I bought a supercar. And I know I'm ranting about this, but that's, I think, really important when you're thinking about personal brand, is like, who are you attracting? What are you trying to attract? Because I've always just put out entrepreneur tips, marketing tips, and tried to attract people that want to work with us. Like at this point, thankfully, we've built a big enough business that we're aspirational to a lot of our clients. And so that is part of how we think about it. But then that aspiration has to be really real. Like it's, what do business owners really want? What do they want out of us? And let's be that for them. Let's not, and it's, if we're getting entrepreneurs that their goal is to go buy a Lambo, it's probably the wrong customer. If their goal is to build a big company and a successful company, have employees that love them and be able to do different things, that's who we're looking for. And then on my level, one thing that I've defined as part of my brand, which I actually will say is to the argument of a lot of the PR companies and stuff that I work for sometimes, is I think work-life harmony is really important. I say harmony, not balance, because I think it has to all blend together. Like I go on entrepreneur heliboarding trips and go snowboarding in eastern British Columbia with a bunch of entrepreneurs, where I get a bunch of business out of it, and I get to jump out of a helicopter on a snowboard, like those kind of things. So like part of my brand has become all this adventurous shit that I do. And I got one of the most flattering statements. A friend of a friend called me Batman the other day.
Wow, what an honor.
Like, you're like tactical training, because I do tactical training. I'm a pilot now. He's like, you're like jumping out of helicopters. He's like, you're basically Batman. I'm like, that is my hope. Like, I will never be Superman. I'm not an alien, but if I could be a rich guy that has cool shit and knows how to do things, I'm into it.
Hey, you know yourself. I like that about you.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that story just perfectly sums up that you need to know what you're after, like if you're just doing this for the sake of doing stuff, like what's the point ultimately?
That's totally true too. Because a lot of people say like, do I need to grow my Instagram following to be successful? It's like, no.
Yeah, I know. It's like small stuff like that. Like, no, there's a million other ways to do it. Yeah. But what's the point?
Why are you actually? And if you're naturally good at it, like I would say I'm mediocre at it. I've just been associated with a lot of people that like, I'm not like the most incredible personal content creator on the planet. I like to think that this book is good. And so far the feedback's all great. But like when it comes to like creating videos on Instagram or something, like I don't want to be Gary Vaynerchuk. And I love the guy. I think he's great, but I'm not trying to replicate. He already does that. I don't need to be a motivational speaker on Instagram. That's not what I'm going for. So that's not where I'm going to double down. And a lot of people almost get this like stress, and it's not FOMO, but it's like, stress on I'm not doing everything. But you can't do everything well. And so you have to focus on like, where do you have superpowers? Where are you good? And like double down on that. And that's where you can be successful. I think that's and that's where I feel like the most fortunate is I found a combination of something I love to do and something I'm really good at really young. And that's hard to do, but really if you can find that balance, I think people overemphasize the idea of like chasing your passion. I have plenty of passions. I'm passionate about my business, but I like in terms of my passion, like what could I do every day, all day, and probably not ever be bored? It'd be snowboarding, but I'm not
Sure.
that good at it. Like I'm not going to be a professional snowboarder. I'm the same age as Shaun White, and he just retired, which makes me feel old as fuck. But like I missed that window apparently, so I'm not going to be a pro snowboarder, and that's okay. I'm going to work. Like I love what I do. You still can love what you do and not have it be your passion. And I learned this with music too, where it's like you
That's
can
right.
be a musician. I still play guitar all the time, but finding the thing that you're really good at and really focusing on it and like figuring out how to silo yourself and as much as you can into just what you do well. And then as you build these businesses, surrounding yourself with people that complement you in everything you don't want to do and aren't good at that's the key. Everyone,
That's the
it's kind of
magic.
a cliche of success.
That's right. Wow. So much value, Eric. First, I just have to say thank you for making so many things that are abstract for so many people as simple as you've made them. It's a true sign of thought leadership. So thank you for coming on the show today and
Yeah.
sharing all of that. I know you have this book that just
Yep.
came out actually
Yep.
relative to when the show got published. Where can people go and find that book? I'll also make sure there's a link here in the show notes.
Yeah, it's just the Hawke Method. It is available everywhere. I mean, Amazon,
Awesome.
Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, the
All the
hawkemethod.com.
places.
Yeah, exactly. Easy.
As
Should be
it-
easy to find.
Heck yeah. And if you can't find it, reach out to us and we'll send you a copy. So,
Yeah, same.
Eric,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been so
Yeah, thank you.
impactful. Really excited to get this out there. And hey, if you listeners out there like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources. Thank you so much for chiming in. I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Auxbus. Auxbus is the all-in-one suite of tools you need to run your podcast. And it's actually what we run here at Speakerflow for Technically Speaking. It makes planning podcasts simple. It makes recording podcasts simple. It even makes publishing podcasts to the masses simple. And quite honestly, Technically Speaking wouldn't be up as soon as it is without Auxbus. Thank you so much, Auxbus. And if you are interested in checking Auxbus out, whether you're starting a podcast or you have one currently, get our special offer, auxbus.com/speakerflow, or click the link below in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.